Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today's video is a bit different, not so much about Excel, but more about debt modeling. So we go into financial modeling just to understand the mind of the financiers. Most of these big projects that you see, or should I say, at the heart of big infrastructure projects, there is a financial model. So there are a number of things that actually happen in the background to just make sure that the money that has been given to the project owner by the financiers is protected, and there's some assurance of some kind that this money is going to be repaid. One of the things that would happen is the financier will agree with the project owner on the minimum debt service cover ratio. So the debt service cover ratio principally assures the financier that they will still be paid based on the minimum that would be set. So what is the debt service cover ratio? The formula is very basic. You have your EBITDA plus your interest income divided by your senior debt, that is the principal part, plus the senior interest. But there will be these questions that would come in. What if there is insufficient funds during that time that you're supposed to actually pay the financier? You do not have your EBITDA is not sufficient enough to finance or to actually pay to service the debt. What would happen? So in a way of reinforcing their finances or hedging against such a risk, the financiers, they will demand that at the start of the project, just at the start of the project, you, the owner of the project, should actually open a debt service reserve account, DSRA, others they call it escrow account, but we'll stick with the debt service reserve account. So in that debt service reserve account, depending on how the investor perceives you, obviously we are talking about risk. If they think you're high risk, the debt service reserve account will have a higher amount in there. Usually, it will be 1 year of debt service. This money will sit in the bank account as long as your EBITDA is able to finance. Still sit in the account up until the time the project debt has been fully amortized. But you'll be generating interest, which goes to reduce your costs. I guess you have gotten the concept clear. So, if they perceive that you are not a high risk, mostly you can still fight it with your negotiators, with the financial modelers that you have put in place, because such projects you also need experienced financial modelers and experienced project experts who understand project financing. They can still reduce it to 6 months of debt service. Most of the big projects that I've seen, 6 months of debt service. So that fund or money is going to sit there as a minimum. But what it does is more of a buffer. In an event that your annual EBITDA is not able to cover the debt service, you'll be able to draw from the debt service reserve account and pay. But the question is, for how long are you going to be getting from or drawing from the debt service reserve account? For how long? So how does the financier try it by so many ways to try and secure his or her financing, her contribution to your project? How does the financier hedge against liquidity issues? Remember that this is project financing, meaning that the project itself is supposed to generate adequate funds to pay or to service the debt. So for how long are you going to draw from the debt service reserve account when it's just about 6 months of debt servicing, at least maybe minimum? So I've put in the logs there. I just want to bring in this concept. So the financier will find ways to make sure that the contract doesn't have a lot of loopholes. One of them would be, if your debt service cover ratio goes below the minimum set or agreed, there will be a lockdown. There will be a lockup, sorry. So that lockup, what it means, you as a project owner, you have no moral or legal issue to pay the junior lenders and also to distribute part of those finances or funds to shareholders through dividends. And this situation happens in such a way that even when you are still, your EBITDA is still able to fulfill debt servicing, it's still able to pay. Maybe the maximum, the minimum is 1.4 or 1.3 debt service cover ratio. You are actually now getting about 1.2. It means that you are still able to pay. But the senior lender gets unsettled. With that trajectory, maybe the senior lender thinks that you will reach at a stage where you fail to start paying. So what does he do in the contract, or what does she do to bring in that clause that once you go below the agreed debt service coverage, you breach that covenant, there will be lockup. So that lockup, what it means that all the funds after the senior debt has been paid, that is both interest and principal, what remains, what should have been funds available for mezzanine debt and for potential distribution to equity shareholders during lock-up, it shall actually go into the debt service reserve account. That's what it means. So I just want to give you a simple scenario on how such situations are actually modeled to fulfill what is in the contract. So we'll start. We'll say we can come up with a date of, say, 31st December 2020. Start from here, say end of month. Like that, 12, close it. Let's take it up there. Okay, so it's just an example. So we'll say from here we have let's just give an example of EBITDA that we have. EBITDA, and say EBITDA is between 2,000 and 2,800. Okay. So now we check on the on senior debt, what is supposed to be paid. Okay, let me just say senior debt service. This is on annual basis. I know that in real models, you have your principal, a row where you have principal, you have also interest. You do your computations using the corkscrew down there, then you compute your interest. Interest could be based on the opening or based on the closing, or most importantly, most common, based on average. So meaning that you pick your opening, you pick your closing, and you average those two, and you get your interest, which gets in there. But here let's assume that you have already done those computations, and the debt service, the total debt service, that is both interest and principal, has been summed up. So here again, we'll say was run between maybe it's let's say 1,500 to 19. 500 to 1,900. Okay. So from here, it shows if funds are available. This is funds available. I'll just put a 1 here. Sorry. So this is basically funds. So this is basically funds available for servicing the junior debt and the possible redistribution of these funds to equity shareholders through dividends. Because you've already paid the senior debt or the senior lenders, and that is their interest. So you have these amounts there. So this is what then now needs to go to servicing other commitments. Then we'll also need to calculate the debt service cover ratio, which will be basically our EBITDA divided by the senior debt service, giving us this. Now, this is your projected. Based on this model, this is your projected. Based on the simulations you have done, the scenario that you are using, obviously you have different scenarios. The maximum could even go to 6 or so on EBITDA scenarios. Then here, and there's this issue of, are you using your P90 or P50? So mostly the others would go for P90, the probability. But then you can create so many scenarios, possible scenarios. So you're saying this is the projected debt service cover ratio, but then your minimum, which has been agreed in the contract, and maybe you are just signing it, you did not know the implication of that this is going to cause. This is why there's need to have financial modelers at every core of your infrastructure discussions and decisions. So say the minimum here, which you have agreed with the lender, is say 1.3. So now the question is here, this is where we look at the status. Want to check whether it's going to be locked. So anything that falls below 1.3, it means that the project will be locked. Then how do we model that going forward? And that is what we'll be also looking at. So here we'll say equals if the projected debt service cover ratio is greater or equal to the minimum. If that is okay, it means that we have to unlock this project. Otherwise, this project has to be locked. have to change and pick the web thing, sorry. So we can format this. Modeling is about visuals, so we should be able to see these things. And a model is about tidiness. It should be clean. It should really get implanted into your mind through the visuals that you put in and all that. There should be meaning to what you're doing. So go to conditional formatting, or go to new rows, or pick this. Then we'll say if these in D20, whatever status on the 1st December 2020 equals to what is in so we'll say if it is locked like that, it is like that. The font color must be red. We'll press like this. We'll press OK. Then we'll still go back there. We'll go to conditional formatting. We'll go to manage rows. We'll go to new row. We'll still pick the same. So if this equals to what is in A4, if that is true, we have to have it in green. Then we can press OK. Press OK. So we can grow this briefly. Grow it to there so that we are able to see in which month there is a lock, where the project has been locked. But we know that in real life, what they'll do, they'll say to unlock, you'll need to have your debt service cover ratio meet the threshold for 2 consecutive periods. If you're using quarters, if you're using years, it should be 2. Then you can unlock, and that money now you can start actually paying the mezzanine. You can start paying your dividends to your equity shareholders. But in the meantime, okay, we're almost there. So this is the concept here. But then now, my area of interest, I just want to model the debt service reserve account. That is what I want to do and to show you here. So say debt service, and I'll do like this: debt service reserve account. Okay, obviously we'll have the opening balance. We'll have the top up, where we will need to, whenever we get from the reserve account in the following months, whenever we have enough funds, we'll still have to top up, and so that we meet the minimum. Okay, this is the first top up, and I'll explain what it is. I'll bring in the top up that specifically comes in because of the lockup. Because of the lockup. Oh my God. The first top up is where there's no lockup. Here, it is where I would say there is, it is unlocked. It is unlocked. There's sufficient funds. The debt service cover ratio is okay, but the funds to finance, you're actually having challenges to finance, it's not adequate to meet the debt service in the previous month or whatever. But then the first one, you're failed to finance the project. You don't have sufficient funds. The other one, where there's lockup, it is where your debt service is more than there's possibility that it is more than one, meaning that you are able to finance the debt service. But the lender, based on the rules that you signed up for, if you don't meet the minimum debt service cover ratio, your project will be locked. So what it means that you will not be able to pay the junior lenders, meaning that money goes directly into the debt service reserve account. That is what it means. So here we have release, where we are actually now releasing, getting funds from the debt service reserve account, paying for the debt service. Obviously, here we are concentrating much on the senior lenders. They are the ones who come up with such onerous requirements. Closing balance. So meaning the opening balance, you have what you call corkscrew. That's what the financial modelers call it. So it will move like this. This is what they mean when they say corkscrew. If I can here say like this. Yes. That is how it moves. So it would affect corkscrew. Say it right. Say it right, folks. Like this. Okay. Then we can show minimum. Minimum debt service reserve account. What should be the minimum in here? So we have agreed that the minimum is going to be about maybe 50% or 40% of the debt service. I can say the debt service around 1.5, so we can say maybe 500. This is the minimum debt service. So obviously, your operating balance But at the time that you actually, maybe it's one of the conditional precedents for the project to be triggered, is that you have to bring in to open an account immediately and secure that money. So you have secured the 500 in here. Okay. So the question is where, for example, you start from here. Say your debt service, say your EBITDA is 1,400. So you have actually gone, obviously you have gone in your lockdown, but then you owe the senior lender this 160. So the only funds that you have to pay is only 1,400. It could be $1 million or whatever it is, when you should have paid 1,560. So where is this money going to come from? According to the agreement, it's supposed to come from your debt service reserve account, and that's the idea. That's the logic behind the debt service reserve account. When you're in some bad days, or what you'd call as rain season, you can go back and draw from there. But with time, you have to top it up. Because if you continue drawing from the debt service reserve account, you're going to deplete it, and meaning that the project then now, it will prove to be unbankable. So here, I'll do like this. Maybe let me remove this unlocked, whatever. I just say, I know it's as long as your EBITDA is lower than your debt service, meaning this thing locks. So what does it mean? It means that you cannot still pay the junior lenders, and you cannot pay yourself dividends. That would be very immoral. So what does it mean here? It actually means that you should be able to top up. So sorry, release is here. We are releasing. So we are releasing this from there. 0. So this is how we use our main functions. They are very powerful functions in modeling. So now you need to top up. So here you have the 340. So your thing is going down. According to the contract, is that you have to top up. Your minimum balance, it should be 500 in the debt service reserve account. So meaning that in months where you have adequate or sufficient funds, this debt service reserve account must be topped up. You must top up. If you don't do that, if it continues going down like this, it means that this project is not sustainable. That's what it means. So here now, this is where we just have to do a bit of some thinking. How do we top up? So when we check on this, if we do like this, first let's go stage by stage. You say the max of this, comma 0. This is the wrong one, but I just want you to follow through in terms of the logic, right? But then what it means is that even in areas where you haven't done a lockdown, you're going to have debt service reserve account that is higher than the minimum, even when you haven't done a lockdown. So here it is assuming that all these funds, they will go into the debt service reserve account logic says no, because you have to pay the junior lenders and you also have to pay the equity providers who are your shareholders. So that cannot happen. So then now, how do we stop this? So under this part, this is where we actually say, we pick this. This is the max, but we are not going to pick the max. We're actually going to say mean the max of that and the max of this minimum. We start from here, where we say 500 here, which is the minimum balance. Sorry, also it's the max. So 500 here, which is the minimum minus any shortage that we have on the opening balance. So, comma 0. Then we can close this now. Let's see whether it works. This makes sense for now. So we have managed to model the first part of the top up, which is not looking at whether it's locked down or whatever. The second part, now it looks at the component, the concept of locking down. So here, this is where we have to also think through that in areas where you have a lockdown, it means that all the funds have to go directly into the debt service reserve account. So how do we do it? Interesting. Okay. So here, if we do like this, sorry, say your EBITDA, your thing here was 1,500, for example, meaning that you would get from the debt service reserve account. So here I can still create just another thing to show debt repayment. This is what you're actually drawing from where? You're drawing from the debt service reserve account, from your escrow account. So this is what you're picking from here as debt repayment. First one. This is what is being paid. Because then it shows that where you have negatives, you're actually drawing from the debt service reserve account. So then now we go to the lockup, topping up when it's the lockup, because the rules, the contractual obligations, the contractual rules are that if your debt service cover ratio is below the threshold, even when it's above 1, you have to, whatever funds that remain after you have paid debt service, it goes into the debt service reserve account. It's a clever way by the senior lenders to safeguard, to hedge against liquidity risk or defaults. So from here then now, what we're actually saying that we'll say if this, the projected debt service cover ratio is less than the minimum, it is less than the minimum, we'll need now to, if it is less than the minimum, we'll need to top up. But then how do we top up? So say max, because we only need the positive numbers. We cannot still get from this line 13, when there's a negative. You cannot change a negative into an outflow into an inflow. So this is why I'm bringing in max. But this max, if I was to pick this one, imagine if it was a positive. If it was a positive, there would be double counting with the second line on line 26. So I'm saying I'm picking that line minus what has been topped out up there, then comma 0. So what it means that if there is a negative, then it should pick 0. Then we have that. Something like this. Okay, so this is what we release. These are the funds here. So this is how it's going to work. If you check where there's a lockdown, it means that the funds where there's a lockdown here, all this 363, it goes into the debt service. So if you add 160 plus 203, it gives you 363. It goes to 700. Because the rule is that when you have a debt service cover ratio that is less than the minimum, then there will be a lockdown or a lockup, what they call a lockup. So in each areas where, like here we have a lockdown, a lockup, but because there is no funds, so meaning that you have to release from there, you have no option. But here there's a lockup, but you still have the funds. So what do you do? The top-up lockup, it will show that this money is coming in because it's sweeping. It's more of a cash sweep. It's sweeping everything that is in the year, taking it to the debt service reserve account. And if you have been observing, you are an ardent follower of how financing is structured, you will agree with me that the senior lenders, their interest on senior debt is lower than on junior debt, because the risks involved on senior debt are much lower. They are the big boys. They set the tone. Then you also see that the equity returns, or the cost of equity, is also higher than the junior debt. That cost, it's simple, because then the ultimate or the group that is so much vulnerable to risk is the equity shareholders. As long as you're bringing in debt, it means that you first, the project itself has to first pay the lenders before it actually pays the equity shareholders. So this is why you find that even the return is actually up. So if you find a structure that is different from that, then just know that it hasn't been well structured. Having done this, I can now say thank you so much. You can visit us on a website called www.royconsultadvisory.com. So royconsultadvisory.com, you'll see a number of things there. Maybe you'll get to understand what we do. We have international clients as we speak, a number of them. So once you go there, you'll be able to check. We do in-house training, Excel, financial modeling, just developing models. And once you subscribe with us, we'll give you 6 months free consultation. Just some few weeks or last week, we had the We Effect that we are training online, and we met them the last 2 or so days at their base in Kabulonga, Kudu Road. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.